Hello and welcome to another AIC video. Tonight I'm going to start out with a plea to Lenovo. Please stop. I only have so much money. So for the last year or so, I've been using this, which is my Lenovo P43S. I have this lovely wood grain skin on it, and it has been a great laptop. It's been my main laptop for editing videos when I can't be at my desktop for any reason. It has an 8th gen Core i7 processor, dedicated NVIDIA graphics, and it's been a great machine, but it's not perfect. While it's still pretty thin and light, it's not super thin and light. The battery life on it, especially now that I've had it for a while, isn't the greatest, and it gets hot and heavy in fairly typical use. And so I have this, which is my Lenovo IdeaPad 1 with an AMD Silver 3050E processor. And this gets great battery life, will last all day. In fact, I've had it just on a trip, 3-day trip, and I used it quite a bit on that trip, and I didn't charge it at all for that entire trip up to visit some family. So great battery life, but it's really not really good for use more than, say, just some web browsing, streaming some online video. I would not purposely choose to use it to edit videos or any kind of real gaming. And so I'm always in the search for something that can get me away from using 2 laptops and narrow it down to just one. And I went on the internet this week and I found this. This is a Lenovo Thinkpad X1 Nano. And this is a sweet machine. And in full disclosure, Lenovo is awesome, and they've sent this to me for review. They've been great in supporting my channel and providing me units for review like this, because normally I would never get the chance to put my hands on something like this. It's just too expensive for me to buy, unlike these or this. While it is not a perfect laptop in as far as replacing these two, it sure comes dang close. The specs are all there. It has an 11th gen Core i7 processor, 16 gigs of RAM, a 512 gig NVMe SSD, which is upgradable, Intel Xe graphics, and a 16:10 aspect ratio screen. We'll get to that here a little bit more later in the video. Using this laptop for the last couple of weeks, I definitely wanted to use the keyboard on this. This is probably one of the most important things for me on a laptop. I do a ton of typing, whether it be my blog, posting on Facebook, Reddit, things like that, writing my scripts. I just spend a lot of time typing. And it's one of the biggest reasons why I use a ThinkPad, is they just have some of the best keyboards on a laptop that money can buy. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the keyboard on my P43S. Now, the keyboard on the X1 Nano is a little bit different. It's a little bit smaller, and the keystroke isn't as deep. It's a little bit shallower of a keystroke, but it requires just a little bit more pressure to push the key. What that means is you get about the same effort to push the key as you do on a traditional ThinkPad keyboard. And it really makes it so when you pick this up, your typing experience on it is very familiar, and you get up to your typical typing speed very quickly. Like I said, it is a little bit smaller. You lose some keys up here at the top that you have on the full-size keyboard, but I really didn't notice that. It wasn't an issue at all for me in my typing experience. So that lack of key travel, not an issue at all. A little bit extra pressure, and it gets you right there to what you expect. One of my favorite things about this laptop and the use in the last couple of weeks is just how quiet it is. In normal, typical, everyday use, the fan almost never runs. It stays fairly cool and very quiet. And even when you're running benchmarks and you're really pushing the system, the fan does come on, but its noise is barely above just the whoosh of the air blowing through the vents. You do not hardly hear any fan noise at all. My P43 has never been what I would consider loud. This is near silent compared to it. In fact, unless I'm really pushing it, it's nearly as silent as my fanless system. The IdeaPad has no fan, and this is nearly as silent as it in normal everyday kind of use. So very quiet, and also it stays fairly cool. Even when running benchmarks, I was able to have this in my lap for extended periods of time and not get uncomfortable. That's not something I say about my P43S. It definitely gets quite warm, and this one just doesn't. It doesn't cook you when you're using it. I'm very impressed by that. And going to that 16:10 aspect ratio screen, it really is the thing that makes this a viable option for me. I've tested a large number of 13-inch laptops, and you guys don't really see those because I try to avoid having anything that I wouldn't recommend on this channel. Sometimes I try to throw in a funny video when something's just ridiculous, but if I really don't like a product, I don't put a video out for it. I don't think it's worth your time or mine. But being that this is that 16:10 versus a 16:9, it really gives you a usable workspace on the machine. Typically with a 13-inch laptop, I feel like you lose too much of your visual aspect, your workspace, without reducing the size of the laptop enough to justify it. So it makes sense to me to go from a 14 to a 12.5 or an 11.6 inch screen. That's why I have these two, is because there's a fairly big difference between these two in size and weight. But between the X13 laptops that I've seen, the X390 I reviewed, it just didn't work for me. But this, it's taller and narrower, and so it gives you that more vertical space that you want when reading web pages, things like that. And it's physically smaller and lighter, and this one is extra small and light, and we'll go into that a little bit later. So I definitely enjoy seeing that aspect ratio on this laptop, and I think it's worthwhile. It makes the 13-inch make sense to me for the first time in a laptop. Battery life on this laptop is really good. I got at least 7 hours of use. Some days I was pushing 8, even 10 hours, depending on what I was doing with it. And that's without doing much to extend my battery life, not dropping the screen brightness much at all, if at all. Not putting it into battery saver mode or anything like that. Just using the laptop as it is, unplug it and go, and it has great battery life. Very impressed with it. It's much better than my P43S and approaches my IdeaPad very closely. So very impressed with the battery life on this system, with what I would consider moderate use. So, not just checking emails, but definitely going on to watching videos and playing some light games, things like that. Definitely had very good lasting power with that battery life. This laptop is very light. The touchscreen version is just over a kilo, or just over 2.2 pounds. The non-touchscreen is just under a kilo, just right at 2 pounds. Very light laptop. It is crazy just how light this system is, and it almost doesn't feel like you're carrying a laptop. In fact, this is lighter than some tablets, and you get a full computer, which is crazy to me. With an excellent keyboard and an excellent touchpad, just how thin and light this laptop is. I really think that Lenovo did something special with this that I really couldn't find in another manufacturer's lineup, especially not for the price. We'll talk about the price a little bit later. One thing that I appreciate in the last few years, when AMD came out with their Ryzen processors, they really pushed Intel to better their CPUs, and it really shows here. So this is an 8th gen Core i7, and this is an 11th gen, so a 3-generation difference between the two. Previous to the 8th gen, the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, there was maybe 10-15% difference between each generation of CPU. It just really didn't move the mark much when you upgraded. You really had to jump fairly large gaps to make it worthwhile. And really, for me, going from 2nd to 3rd gen meant I got USB 3. The CPU performance didn't seem to improve much, and the graphics performance didn't improve much. But the difference here is massive. So this, on my benchmark score that I use for everything, has almost this entire computer's performance. In fact, I think it is this entire computer's performance better than this for the CPU mark. It's 4,000 point difference, about 700 to 7,000 to 11,000 points. Graphics. This has dedicated NVIDIA MX 250 or 250 MX graphics on here. Dedicated graphics, dedicated graphic memory. With integrated graphics, it outscores it by over 500 points. That's crazy. This is an incredible machine. It is not a gaming laptop. Don't get me wrong. It's not a gaming laptop. This is a work machine. This is a I am doing business machine. So you're not going to play the latest AAA title games on here. You definitely play some casual games on here, but what you're really going to be able to do is run that 3D CAD software, run that modeling software for your 3D printer, things like that, where you really do need that GPU. You'll also be able to utilize it for editing videos, which is fairly GPU intensive, without having to sacrifice the added weight, heat, power consumption of a dedicated graphics card. Obviously, if you have that, you'll have better performance overall, but it isn't quite the requirement that it was with this. I've ran several machines with 8th gen core i7 processors, and this blows them out of the water for those tasks because it has a dedicated graphics, and then this blows this out of the water. It's so good with performance. I'm impressed. I'm impressed with what they've done here. I said this is a really good laptop, nearly perfect. What is wrong with it? There's a few things. This is really nitpicky of me, I will admit. First and foremost, to be this thin and light with a touchscreen, I wish it wasn't a gloss touchscreen. I wish it was matte. I've never been a big fan of gloss touchscreen, even though the laptop I use every day is gloss. I wish it was matte. It's easier on my eyes, easier to deal with. This isn't terrible. It's not the worst, but it's not great. Lenovo, make it a matte touchscreen if at all possible. I know you can do it. I've seen it in the past on previous laptops that I've owned, like the 25th anniversary. The other problem is if you go with the non-touchscreen to get the matte screen, which you can do, you lose the attractive carbon fiber cover here. That's unfortunate. This is really attractive. It looks really nice. It avoids the fingerprints, unlike the black. The plain black does attract fingerprints pretty bad. So I wish they had the carbon fiber without a touchscreen so you could get that matte screen there. The other thing that you lose on this is connectivity. So on my P43S, because that's what I have to compare it to, I have plenty of USB-C ports and A ports, and I have a network port still. This just has 2 Thunderbolt ports, and that's it. And it makes sense. This just physically would struggle to have larger ports. And to be honest, anymore, it's not that big a deal. 3 years ago, it was a big complaint of mine. I thought it was ridiculous that they were pushing the Thunderbolt-only ports on certain laptops. They weren't as thin and light. It just didn't make sense on them at the time. Plus, a lot of people, USB Type-C just wasn't as common as it is today. And so now I have extra charging adapters. I have extra USB Type-C docks that can do video and network and all that other jazz. SD card reader, stuff like that. I have cables that came in my cell phone, came with a USB Type-C cable on it. So it's not as big of a cardinal sin now, especially on something that is this thin and light. If this was a thicker, more robust system like other computers that are out there, it's still unacceptable to me. But this being so thin, so light, I give it a slight pass. It's a slight annoyance. I wish it would at least have an Ethernet port. I've seen them where they can fold out to open up and you plug that in. I think that's something they could fit on here, and I think it would definitely be a benefit to it. Then the last thing that really is a sticking point for me is the price. You can get the same CPU in another system with possibly upgradable memory as well as the upgradable storage, things like that, for a little bit less money. MSRP. Now I am talking the straight up MSRP. This system is pushing about $3,000 MSRP. So it's a fairly expensive laptop. However, Lenovo being Lenovo, always has a sale, always. And right now, at the moment I'm recording this video, this laptop's selling for like $1,300, or excuse me, yeah, $1,300, just shy of $1,400. If you get the one with the 1 terabyte SSD in here, it's $1,500, which is a smoking deal if you're in the market for a new ultra thin notebook. If you're shopping things like the MacBook Air, the Dell XPS 13, I really think that this needs to be pushed up to the top of your list for that price. It's lighter, looks better, has a better keyboard, better touchpad, better screen. I think this is just a better machine in every way for that $1,500 than those other machines, and it should be the one that you at least very closely consider. Once again, the thing that you interact with the most on this is that keyboard. At least for me personally, I type a ton, and it makes a huge difference. And this, oh, so light. It's ridiculous. Here, just for comparison, this is just how much smaller it is, and it's like half the weight, and it's my 11-inch laptop is almost bigger and thicker. Look at that. It's ridiculous. Lenovo, I need it. I want it. I gotta have it. Anyways, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm trying to do things a little bit differently. I have a screen over here with my notes up. Hopefully I edit most of my looking at them out. We'll see how that does. If you have any thoughts, comments, suggestions on this video, please leave that down in the comment section down below. I'll do my best to answer those. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.